Well, hello there. It's been a long time since we've done a video. I've been finishing up a bunch of guitars and it's just been busy and haven't really had time to get the video camera in here. I will say one thing that one thing we're going to do a triage today. I've got three new guitars in, and we're going to go through them, take a look at them, and see what they need and see what I think they need and that sort of thing. And one thing about getting my workload done, um, tremendous help for me. You know, if you watch my video from like last year, and I got my benches back into this little shop here. This little shop has some problems. I've got to really have to work on weatherizing this thing come summertime. I've got I've got leaks up on the roof, condensation going on in here, and things like that. But once I moved my benches in here, it just made everything so much nicer because I've been using the benches that I designed for me, and some of them, like my main bench that's over there, I've been using for 22 years. You know, a long time, and I'm just comfortable with the height. I'm comfortable with everything, the location, everything. But to get to my point here, the thing that is so helpful to me, and I didn't realize it until it was gone, was my whiteboard. Let's take a look at the whiteboard here. And there is my whiteboard. And it's just got a list of everybody's guitar and the things that. So that whiteboard is such a simple thing. Um, I missed it a lot when I didn't have it in here. In my other shop, I had a bigger whiteboard that actually lives in the office right now. This shop is so small, I don't really have any room on the walls for anything. And I had to order a new whiteboard that fit in that little space right there. And let me tell you, it's just so nice for me to write down what it is I'm doing to the guitar, and I put a check off, you know, when I get it done. And I've got a to-do list at the bottom of it to do. This one needs a K and K and a strap button, and then it's done. This other one has a loose X brace. I got the bridge on. I need to cut a saddle off. And I make a short to-do list, one that is manageable, because obviously, you know, I can have 100 items on that to-do list, but this is a manageable to-do list. And when I walk in here and I have a limited amount of time to work, I spend so much less time wondering what it is I'm supposed to be doing today. And so that's the purpose of this triage here, too. I look over these instruments and I go, okay, yeah, this needs this, that, that. I make a list, and then I come back and refer to that list. So it's a pretty valuable thing for me to go through the guitars every so often and go through the checklist, see what I'm doing, see how I've done, what I need to do immediately. You know, this one guitar, all it needs is a K and K and strap button, and it's done. So, you know, I'll get that done real quick here. So hopefully I can get that guitar shipped this week. And stuff like that. Okay, so let's look at the guitars that I got in, and these should be pretty popular videos. You know, I thought you guys would get bored to death watching me go through the guitars. It's a lot of the same thing, repetitive thing. They do the same sort of thing. But I do have some interesting guitars here, and I took this one in for that reason. People are always asking me this, okay? They're always asking, are you accepting new work? And no, yes and no. You know, I'm working, but I have, like I said, very, very limited time to get in here, and it's very unpredictable. So right now it's getting ready to snow for 3 days, and I'm not going to be able to make it to Los Alamos to do my thing. So I plan to pretty much hold up here in the shop and get some work done, stuff like that. But you know, if it wasn't for the snow, I could be getting a call and I might have to head off for Los Alamos this afternoon. You know, it's unpredictable. So I'm not really taking new work. You know, that makes it sound like my waiting list is really short. My waiting list is huge. So the best that I do with new incoming work is simply read it over, see whether it's not whether or not it's a job I even really want to do. Because it sounds terrible to say, but I've got enough work to do that I can be really picky about what I want to do. I don't have to do this for a living. I only do this because it's fun. I seem to be pretty good at it, and people like my services and that kind of thing. But mostly, not very many people will do the full thing on a 1970s D. Either they don't do the bridge plate, or they won't scoot the bridge, or they just don't do it the way I like to do it. And their work is probably perfectly fine for what they do, but I have my reasons for why I want to do things the way I want to do them. And I think the guys that come to me with their 70s agree with my philosophy, So I work primarily for people who agree with my philosophy and who I know then are going to be good customers. We're going to get along. Everybody's going to be happy. I don't want a guitar that someone tells me, I want this done, this done, this done, and this done, but I don't want this. Well, maybe I think it needs that. And I understand you got to pay for this, I do understand that. But I don't want to work that way. I've got enough customers to say, here's my 70s D, do whatever you need to do to it. So I got enough people like that I turn down a lot of work. For instance, I turn down small bodies these days, and there's nothing wrong with small bodies. I love small body Martins, but they're hard to work in. They're really hard to get your hand in there, to do a popsicle bridge, to do a bridge plate. They're shallow. I can't get my hand to bend correctly, and it's really hard on my hands. And so I just made a decision, actually just before the move, and I was thinking about, bailing out of small bodies a little bit. Yet I love small bodies, and it's, I feel bad about not working on them sometimes, but I've got enough stuff to do. I've got a limited amount of time. I've got a lot of work, so I'm picky about what I take in, and I want a high success ratio. So that's why I say that I take guitars from people that I know, that we see eye to eye on things, so that we're going to have a high success rate. Because if it's a low success rate, I just don't really have the time to hassle with it. So, okay, this guitar today, this was the first one here, and I took this one because it is interesting, and it's a former customer. I've worked on a bunch of his guitars. I mean, I don't even know how many, 5 or 6 of his guitars. And this one is a D28 Museum Special, and this is the only one of these that I have seen. This is, I'm not sure the exact specs on this, but it looks to me an awful lot like a 1941 authentic. I can see that the finish stops right here on the edge of the fingerboard. It's got, evidently has a T-bar truss rod in it, or it's a non-adjustable truss rod. I'm not seeing an adjustment right there. It's a red spruce top. It's got the pick guard underneath the finish. That's very clear. I'm going to hazard it's put together with hide glue. And it's definitely Madagascar rosewood. So I'm not sure exactly what the difference is between this and a 1941 authentic. I'd have to read up on that and see. But, just looking at this, if I didn't look inside the label, in fact, I did look inside the label, when it came in, I had to double check that this was not a 41A. Now, when I handle it, so it's gonna be fun comparing this to the shop's, whose guitar is it? It's a shop guitar. The shop's D28 1941 authentic. Done a lot of videos on that. It's gonna be real fun to compare the two. I wouldn't expect a whole lot of difference. However, I think the neck on this one is a little chunkier than the 41, which is interesting, because if I feel the 41 authentic has one shortcoming, it's the narrowness of that neck. It's thin. The one I have seems like it's a little bit thicker than the one I previously had. The one I previously had was really thin. Every time I picked it up, I thought, gosh, that's a thin neck, front to back. And on the one I have now, I don't feel that. So that's interesting. I know the necks are pretty well hand carved on the authentic, so, maybe I got a little bit of a thicker one. But this one feels really, really good. It's got a definite meat to it back up in here. I'd have to lay calipers on it because I might be fooled by something. I've been fooled before. For instance, one time I had a D18 1939 authentic, and I had a 70s 72 something D18, and I had them both on the bench, and I may have a video of this too. I had them both on the bench, and I picked up the 39. And I thought, oh, the neck is just so thin. It feels narrow to me. And the 72 D18 was just perfect. God, I picked up, I'm like, oh, that's a neck, you know. So I wanted to see what the difference was, and I got my calipers out and started measuring everything, and I found out something very, very interesting. And that is, the neck width was exactly the same. I mean, as close as I could measure, exactly the same in the width of the neck, all the way up and down the neck, and the depth of the neck. And I thought, what's the difference? You know, the measurements are as close as any two guitars I have ever measured. And the difference is that the 72 had a very slight rounded V, but it had a definite V shape to it, whereas the 39 authentic, D18, 1939 authentic, had a C, round shaped baseball neck. And that was the only difference in the feel that I could come up with. And as I paid attention after that, I could say, yeah, I like the V because it puts my thumb back here rather than feeling this round thing. And so it just goes to show you that your hand is very, very sensitive to neck feels. Sometimes people ask me, you know, can you reshape my neck? I want it to feel like this, this, and this. Man, that's tough. The only way, I've done just a couple of those, and I'm really hesitant to reshape someone's neck for a specific feel that they're after, because it is so hard to get that. You can use your little gauges and things like that, but I'm telling you, your hands can feel, you know, 10,000ths, 5,000ths of an inch difference, especially in the shape of the neck. Some people are more sensitive to the V shape than other people are. Just things like that. The only time I really I've ever done it is when I had both guitars in my hand. I said, this is the one you like, this is what you want this to be. And you do a lot of measurements, make sure you can actually get the other one there. I don't like to do it. That's one thing I wouldn't do anymore now because I just don't have the time to fuss with it. So, anyway, this is a 41. I'm sorry, yeah, this is a museum special. What is it called? It's called the 1941 Museum Edition. So, you know, I think it's a precursor to the authentic. I remember when they came out, but I can't remember right now. So let's see what this guitar is going to want. He didn't send me a sheet in the case, so I got to go get the emails. But I'll tell you what I see looking at the guitar. First of all, the action is really high. Put a little string tension on it. Does this have Waverly tuners? Yeah, these are Waverlys. They feel a little stiff. And I think that was one of his complaints. I think he said the tuners were really stiff. I'm just putting some tension on it. Good enough. Okay. Check the nut. No, the nut's high. That's typical. Yeah, the nut's high on all 6 strings. That needs to come down. Let's take a look at the relief. The relief is pretty decent. I'm not sure exactly what it is. It looks like about 0.008 of an inch or so. I got to go get a capo over there, which I don't want to do. But the relief is not bad. The action looks kind of high to me. Let's stick a 0.090 of an inch in here and see what we get. Yeah, action's way high. Maybe 125. It's higher than that. I don't like that. $130. I'll grab my calipers, hang on. Action's 125. That's pretty high. So 125, so if we dropped it down to 95 thousandths of an inch, that would be 30 thousandths of an inch difference. 95, 105, 15, 25, yeah, 30 thousandths of an inch. That's going to be 60 at the saddle. And I can tell you it hasn't got 60 thousandths of an inch to play with right here. I bet the saddle is probably 140, maybe. Just under 140, 135. We haven't got 60 thousandths of an inch to play with here. We've got, at most 30 thousandths of an inch, which is only going to take the action about halfway to where it needs to be. Now, I'm going to gain a little bit when I lower it at the nut. That's going to help a little bit. God. I mean, I'm thinking it's going to need an equi-set. The saddle's really, really nice. I would like to keep that saddle. You know, the height is perfect. The height is perfect. So I hate to just go over there and shave that saddle down. What it really needs is an equi-set. That's typical of the Authentics. You know, I've seen so many of the Authentics that I've seen have lows, have high actions, and by the time you get the action down, then the saddle is super low. So let's get the straight edge. Straight edge is just a secondary check, remember, but it's gonna tell me some secondary like things here. And see, it's bumping into the bridge. It's falling below the height of that bridge. So I got high action. I got a perfect saddle. Straight edge is bumping into that bridge, so the neck angle is not quite perfect. And then the other test that I use a lot of times, I've showed you this before, is to lay the straight edge on the top of the guitar, and the top of that fingerboard ought to come. And that's not too terrible. So it's not going to need much of an equi-set if it needs one. So let's see, 60 thousandths of an inch, no, 30 thousandths of an inch here. 60 thousandths of an inch here. Divided by 3 is 20. So I need to take about 20 thousandths of an inch off the heel to get that neck angle really where I really want it. 20 thousandths of an inch is not much. Here's 18. That's how much I got to take off. I would like to take off the neck. And that's not much, you know. So you can see there's nothing wrong with the guitar. It's just that when Martin put it together, they were just a little bit conservative on that amount of heel they took off, which is all right, you know. I would rather have this situation again than one that has a very, very low action and a super tall saddle, and you're trying to raise it and you can't do it. Then you need a reverse neck reset to really tune it. So I would, which is much more difficult. You've got to use shims under here, or you've got to take a little bit off of the heel, or you've got to use some other trickery. Whereas a neck reset like this is pretty straightforward. You pop the neck off, you take a little bit off the heel, you put it back on. And not a big deal. I would really rather see that. So this guitar really needs an neck reset to be optimum. You know, we can get away with a couple of things. The other thing that I see over here, looking at this right away, the pins are not seated very well. This pin is seated up really high. The owner asked, what kind of pins are these? These are antique acoustic. I can tell you right now, they're the wrong pins for this guitar. Whoever replaced those used the black dot. They used the black dot, the big heads, which are supposed to be on the 30s guitars. 40s guitar ought to have the smaller head and the red dots. So I'll show you these pins. You can see what I'm talking about, hopefully. I don't know, I'm going to get closer because the microphone's right there and I don't want to hit it. These are big-headed, black dot antique acoustic. They ought to be small head red dot, which is no big deal. If you only wants to, I'll just swap in pins. I have a lot of the red dots because that's primarily what I put on 70s Ds and things like that. I rarely use the black dots because I'm trying to match the pick guard, and the smaller heads just look better. The bigger dot is designed for a 2 and 5/16 inch bridge on the 30s, you know. So the wider apart and the bigger heads don't look so cramped. This looks cramped to me. I mean, I could see that across the room. That those are the big-headed antique acoustic pins. Antique acoustics are great pins. I love them. That's about all I use anymore, except for ebony once in a while. So those are good pins. They're just not seated very well. The low E needs a little bit more slotting on the bridge, which is preventing it from sitting straight. Other than that, it looks good. So, you know, I'm going to have to tell the customer, I think my advice, my 100% money not considered advice is this guitar should use a neck reset. Lacking that, if he doesn't want to do that, that's fine. You know, I'll work with it. I'll take the saddle down some, but we're not going to get a 93 thousandths of an inch action here. That's 3/32 of an inch. Not going to get that. In fact, I think the best you're going to get probably off of that is, let's see again, 135. Yeah, 135. I wouldn't want to take that. I'd take that 30 thousandths of an inch, which is going to leave us with 105, which is slow. It's painful, you know. So took 30 thousandths of an inch off here. That's going to drop that down to 15. So I had 125 minus 15. You're going to have a 110. It's still too high, you know. 110 is just a little too high of an action to really be comfortable. So you're going to spend some time shaving the original saddle down. The action is still not going to be right. It's going to be better, not going to be right. So my advice is going to be a neck reset on this guitar. Nothing wrong with that. It's just a matter of paying the money, you know. I mean, I understand guys buy guitars and they you hate to spend $300 for a neck reset, but I mean, it's just the way it goes. I mean, I talk about this all the time, but riding dirt bikes, for instance, is horrendously expensive. I bought a KTM 150 3 years ago. Paid $7,500 for it out the door. First thing I did, I rode it a couple times, and I could see right away the suspension really needed work. I would jump the bike, and it was unstable. One time it would come up front real high, the next time it would kick, you know, the back would come up, and it was just, you never knew what was going to happen. If there was some little bump on the lip of the thing and the back hit it and it would kick, it was a dangerous situation. The back was too stiff, the front was too soft. Dangerous situation. I could not race it. That's what it amounted to. When I raced it, I sat right on the back to wait that shock and keep the front end. And you just can't do that in a race, you know. So the first thing I did with my $7,500 KTM was send the suspension off to get worked on. $1,500 right there. So I'm up to $9,000 on this bike right now. The carburetor on it was terrible. Everybody knows the carburetor is terrible on the KTMs. I did all the modifications to it. It still just didn't run very good. So I'm getting old. I'm going to die someday. I decided I wanted to try an Electron carburetor, which I've never done. It's a metering carburetor. It adjusts for altitude and temperature adjustments. There's lots of people that say, oh, that's stupid, you should just jet. Yeah, but when I'm coming from here in New Mexico at 7,000 feet elevation, I go to Oklahoma to race at 800 feet elevation. The last thing I want to do when I get there after driving for 12 hours is rejet my bike and get gasoline all over my hands. And I still can't try it out because there's no test loop. So I thought, well, I'm going to get this Electron. I'm going to try it out. It cost me $500. So now I'm up to $9,500 on this bike. Second thing I did, I raced it a couple times, and I immediately got flat tires. I DNF. That did not finish. 3 races due to flat tires. And I'm talking flat tire coming off of the rim. You cannot race with a flat tire. You just can't, especially in an enduro where you're at, 40 miles from your truck. You're way out there. I had to get hauled out on the meat wagon one time because, there I am. My tire's off the rim. The inner tube is shredded. I don't have a spare tube. I'm not going to carry a 4-pound spare tube in my back for this. Anyway, so I DNF 3 races. That means all the gas, all the entry fees, everything down the drain. Plus, I ruined a tire on one of them. So I had to put mooses in them. Mooses are $125 each. Now I'm up to $250. I'm up to almost $10,000 on this motorcycle. And paying $7,500 was painful. Okay, point being, $300 for a neck reset, not that bad. I realize it's a lot of money. Somebody just bought this really nice Martin, and the last thing they want to hear is it needs a $300 neck reset. But I would tell you this, the neck reset will be right. You'll have the action you want. You'll have the saddle you want. Plus, I will use wooden shims, and you'll be done, And then this guitar doesn't need, unlike KTM's and dirt bike, this guitar will need no more maintenance for a long time. Eventually it's going to need frets, but that's years down the line. So I understand it's painful, not nearly as painful as it could be if you're in any other sport, besides guitar playing. Guitars are cheap. They really are. No matter what you spend for one, you spend a little bit more money, get it where you want. Hire somebody good that's going to give you the right thing and not just do the job because it's a job. When I do a neck reset on this, if I do a neck reset on this, it's going to be right. I mean, that's it. I'm going to have 95 thousandths of an inch of action here, and I'm going to have that saddle. And if I don't get that, I would do it again. So, at no other charge, So I understand again that it's painful, but it's not that bad. And so that's my evaluation on this guitar, which I'm very much looking forward to playing. It's my authentic. I think it needs a neck reset. Everything else looks great, Good looking guitar. All right, let's get the next one. Guitar number 2 is the 70s D28 278. So early 70s. Again, I'm not sure what this one needs. There's no paperwork in there. There's a bridge in there, and that's interesting. It looks like my saddle. Huh. I wonder if we put my saddle in here to do something with the action. Remember, there's a bridge in there, and I vaguely recall something about he wants the bridge swapped on this because this bridge isn't correct or something like that. I don't know. I'll have to look that up. I'm just evaluating the guitar. It's a 70s. It's got rotomatics on it. Got a bone nut. No, this is Corian. I think this nut's been replaced. That doesn't look like the original 70s finish to me. I guess that's the original nut, but it's Corian, which shouldn't come in till later. Should be either micarta or ivory. This finish is too shiny. And the finish cracks is really deep here. I wonder if this guitar's been refinished at some point, which would explain the Corian nut, because somebody put a nut on it and then refinished it. It's not a bad refinish, I'm not saying that. The back looks pretty good. The back's got the little pitting. As the finish ages, it pits and kind of goes in there. And the back looks really good. I don't think the back's been refinished. And the binding is nice and yellow here. So if it's been refinished, it was done quite a while ago. There's a couple cracks right here. There's a big crack in the top. It's closed, but the crack is a crack over here that I can feel more than I can see. There's a crack up here on the fingerboard. Normally, I couldn't care less about cracks, but this one over here on the fingerboard is a little bit disconcerting. I want to pay attention to that because that's usually the result of a failed popsicle brace. So first thing we're gonna do is take some Goo Gone here. This is just naphtha basically. I'm gonna squirt it on there. And what this will do is it'll run through that crack and I can see if it's going through the finish, how bad it looks in there. I like to know things like that. So let's see what we got. Stick the mirror in here. And yeah, it's going right straight through. So we got a crack right there. We also have a crack up against the fingerboard right here. I can see that very plainly, yeah, on both sides. So he's got, right there. You can see it right there. This is going to be really hard to get on the camera, but I'm just going to tell you, and you can look on your own guitar sometime, but there's a crack right here, and it's coming through the rosette, okay? I need a pointer. Crack right here. And it's going through the rosette, and the rosette has some distortion to it. So what that means is that we have a failed popsicle brace. The popsicle brace is the one that sits in front of the big sound hole brace. It's a flat brace right up here. It's supposed to stop these cracks, and almost every guitar that I've ever seen with these kind of cracks has a popsicle brace in it. So it doesn't do a very good job of it. So I'm going to look at this a little closer. We definitely have a failed popsicle brace there. And it hasn't shifted too much. Normally, if you look at the rosette rings very carefully right here, and you'll see the rosette rings slide forward or back if this is really shifting. So what's happened with these, the only way that those cracks can happen is if your neck block, which is like this, and the top is on it, if that neck block shifts forward, is the only way that can happen. You see, if this is rigid system, it really doesn't matter how much pressure the fingerboard extension puts on there, it can't really crack it. The only way it can crack it is if that neck block is sitting up here on the neck and that neck block shifts, so it pivots forward like this. That happens when you have a failed popsicle brace, or the guitar fell on its butt and the neck pushes forward. Just things like that. That's what causes that. Sometimes if it's in bad need of a neck reset and the neck angle is way up high, putting a lot of pressure on this fingerboard extension, sometimes that can cause a crack. Sometimes I don't know what causes the crack. I get the guitar and there's a crack. But this guitar's got a fingerboard crack. It's got two cracks running alongside the fingerboard. So that means there's no wood holding that neck block from falling forward. The solution is to get the popsicle brace out of there. Use a trapezoid brace that goes from the neck block to the big sound hole brace and wedges itself in there. And that way the neck block cannot rotate forward because it's got a brace in between and it can't move. It's braced. My brace goes in between the neck block and the sound hole brace and makes a wedge. And your neck can't move. That's how you fix those, okay? So I'm going to have to take a popsicle brace out. It's a medical emergency for this guitar. The bridge doesn't look too terrible. Let's look at the intonation. And let's see if we got a large rosewood bridge plate in here, which we should. And we do. Big rosewood bridge plate. It's got a big spruce patch right up under here where somebody cleated the B string crack. The pick guards shrink on the 70s and they cause cracks. This one's been replaced. It's not the original material, and it's a fairly average. Yeah, it's pretty average because it doesn't meet the rosette right here. Let's see if we can get on this. Look at the pick guard going around the rosette, and you can see that it doesn't meet it up here. So the pickguard's kind of shifted a little bit. The rosette ring is not evenly on the rosette. There's some wood showing here. Kind of a sloppy job if you ask me. Could fit better than that, but there it is. What else we got? We want to check the intonation. It's got a large rosewood bridge spacer. So far, it's a pretty typical 70s. That's seen a little work. Here's my measuring stick. Middle of the 12th fret. And bridges off by 1/8 of an inch. So that's all there is to it. 11 inches here. Maybe just a hair over. Pretty close to 11. Should be 11 1/8. Yeah. So it's 1/8 of an inch off. Yeah. Bridge has got to be scooted or the intonation corrected somehow. So on the whole, pretty typical 70s. How about the reaction? Doesn't matter. I know there's something I got to do the bridge. Can't remember what. Let's check the action. We got 90 thousandths of an inch. Yeah, that's really high too. There's 126. About the same as the other, 125. High action. Nuts better on this one. Nuts better on this than it was on the 41. The nuts looks pretty good. Let's see what the gap is in between the strings. Pretty wonky. E and A, G and B, and B and E are all pretty close. A to D is big, and D to G is also big. So you got this big gap in the middle. Nut could be better than that. It's not terrible, you know. Customer wanted to save a little money, but we got 250 between the E and the A, and we've got 270. So you've got 20 thousandths of an inch, 260, 250, 253. I mean, I wouldn't sweat between 250 and 253. But 20 thousandths of an inch bigger right there. Yeah, I'd probably do a new nut because I can do better than that. 20 thousandths of an inch is that much. That's how much more gap there is. Whether you think that's noticeable or not, I don't know. It'd be noticeable to me because when I make like a B7 chord, I want that room up there, and having the A closer to the E, I'd feel that. Now, one easy solution would be on this would be to fill in both the A and the D slots with bone. So cut them even deeper, fill them in with a bone insert, and scoot those two strings over a little bit. I would typically only do that on like an ivory nut where I'm trying to save it. This is a Corian nut, which has been replaced at some point. And so replacing it with a bone nut is only going to be a good thing. These pins are plastic. This crack over here, let's see what we got here. Like I said, it's nice and tight. I don't think I'm going to do much to it. I just kind of want to be aware of it when I go to take the bridge plate out. I don't know what's going to happen there. I've never had any issues, but I just like to know, probably because I check, you know. It's cleated. Okay. There's cleats in there. The naphtha did go through. I don't think it's going to cause us any issues. So this is a pretty typical 70s overhaul. I would like my variation. Tuners, nut. Frets are alright. Neck relief is alright. It could be a little bit better, but it's not bad. It's not going to cause any issues. I'd be happy with that. So I think the frets are fine. Popsicle brace has got to come out, and got to have my trapezoid brace put in there. I'd probably straighten up the pick guard, but that's not a terrible big deal. Kind of depends on how much you want to spend on this. Got to read up on the bridge to see what the deal with the bridge is. This does not look like a bad looking bridge to me. It's got to get scooted, and it's going to get trimmed down a little bit when I do that. So I'm going to be reshaping this bridge anyways. I don't think we've got enough saddle to adjust here. Yeah, same thing. This saddle's 145, so it's a little bit taller. It's still got to go 60 thousandths of an inch, and it's not going to do it. So it needs an neck reset. So I'll read up on the bridge, but I would probably keep this bridge, unless the other one's significantly better or something. It's not tall. In fact, if anything, it's a little bit short looking. So a bridge plate would come out, scalloping, 270 over there. It's not bad. Yeah, 330. I'd say that bridge is pretty well perfect. It's a little wide because it's the 70s. You know, 440. It ought to be about 420, 410, which I'm going to reshape it anyways. I wouldn't necessarily replace that bridge. I'd scoot it and I'd reshape it, but we'll see what he has to say. There's a bridge in the case over there, and I think this bridge is coming off. Looked like it had a loose spot. No? Yeah, right there on the wing, just a little. Which doesn't matter because it's going to come off anyway, so. Pretty typical 70s overhaul. Let's get another one out. Alright, guitar number 3. This is a D28. 712. What's that make it? A 90s or something? And he sent money. And he sent, that's what I like. It's a summary of our emails. This helps me a lot. This makes things faster. So let's see what he's got here. 99. He thinks it's a 99. Okay. He got it as a wedding present. And he won't sell it, obviously not. But the tone has never been quite what I hoped for. He got a 2006 HD28V, which has a huge bass and response compared to the standard D28. Yep. He was going to leave this one alone, but he would like to get a little bit better sound out of it so it gets more playtime. I understand that. Okay, so he's thinking about doing the popsicle, the back braces, a partial scalloping. Got a couple of other things. I recommended unslotted bridge pins, and then he's going to be shipping home, and he needs a chrome strap button on the side of the heel, which isn't a big deal. So I kind of agree with that. So this is pretty much a 90s overhaul. This one's got nice tuners on it already. Grovers, 18-1. Who put those on there? Did a pretty decent job. Whoever put the tuners on there. They got the raccoon eyes out really well. Of course, during the 90s, it's a thinner finish on the headstock rather than the 70s. 70s had a thick finish and the washers sink in. This one looks really good. Whoever did that did a great job. And this guy strings your strings right. Look at that. Oh, man, I already like this guitar. He's got one over, one under, one over. Good job. Okay. I already like this guitar because of that. So, we have an adjustable truss rod on this one. So, first thing we're going to take a look at, his neck relief looks alright. The guitar's not tuned up. Put some tension on it. Alright. Got a lot of sound improvement. No wonder it doesn't sound very good. It's got the micarta saddle in it. Let's see what the action looks like. I hope this isn't another neck reset. I like neck resets, but I feel bad about everyone that comes in here. No. He's alright. He's 90 something. Nut's just a little high, so I'm going to gain a little bit of action there. And his neck relief could be just a little bit lower. So I think I'm going to get this one okay. I don't think he's going to need a neck reset. His saddle's low, but the action is okay. We can work with the action. And the one fear I have, 115. So that's acceptable. That's acceptable, especially considering his bridge is not slotted yet. Once I slot the bridge, it's going to increase the brake angle a little bit more. And I think he'll be all right. I don't think he's going to need a neck reset. My one fear is that when I scalp the braces, the top might rise a little bit. But I'm not doing the bridge plate. So, my experience with scalping just the X braces is the top doesn't move that much. If it does, it'll be 10 years before it does. So I think he's going to be okay with not needing a neck reset. And yeah, he's got a popsicle brace in here. He's got the L-shaped truss rod cover, which I knew. He's got a medium-sized maple bridge plate. Not quite as small as the ones I use, but it's acceptable. I wouldn't be in a hurry to rip that bridge plate out at all. And he's got non-scallop braces, which we knew. So this looks pretty good. This looks like a standard post-94 overhaul where I'm going to shave the two rear back braces. I'm going to do the popsicle brace. Somebody's already done the tuners, and that's good. His intonation is probably going to be pretty good, and it is. I mean, it's good, It could be back just a hair, but no, treble looks great. The bass side always needs to go back just a hair more than Martin typically gives it. If I was going to cut a long vintage saddle in here, I would angle that low E back just a tiny bit, just a little. Get that intonation on just a little bit more. But this is not bad. It's not bad. It's certainly playable. I mean, it's certainly going to play in tune, too. So this one should be pretty straightforward. I might have this one done by the end of the week if I get motivated to do it. He's going to, so tuners are good. I'll check the nut later, but the nut spacing looks good. Martin did get a lot better at the nuts. In fact, I copied theirs for one of them. It looks like a Corian nut, which is okay if the spacing is good. Spacing's real good on this guitar. Yeah, it's real good. I'd leave the nut alone unless he just wants to spend money. I do think there's a difference in Corian and bone nuts. People say, oh, no, the nut doesn't make any difference after you fret the note. It only matters on the open strings. But I don't think that's true because when you fret, say here, you get those back buzzes between the fretted note and the nut. And that's where the string will just kiss the fret top right there. If the nut doesn't make any difference after you fret, then how come you get buzzes back behind there? How come you get a rattle back behind between the fretted note and the nut? And how come your tuners vibrate? I don't think the vibrations stop just because you fret the note. It goes on back into the nut. All those vibrations from the headstock, mandolin players will take little rubber grommets and they stick them up here to kill the vibrations, to kill the unwanted overtones and stuff that come from these strings right here. When you play, the neck vibrates, the guitar vibrates, and the vibrations in the neck, if nothing else, cause these to rattle and ping, make all kinds of cool noises. And people stick stuff under here in order to kill the vibrations. Well, if the vibrations stop and you fret it, then how come there's vibrations going on back there? And I think the nut captures some of that. It's small. I mean, I grant it, it's small. But if you want your guitar to perform as good as it can perform, then I think the nut is a fairly important part of your sound. It contributes to it. Okay? But this accordion nut, good spacing, and if money's an issue, it's always an issue. I wouldn't be in a hurry to replace that nut. If he wants me to, I'd be happy to replace it with bone to match the saddle. So I'll talk to him about that. He's definitely getting a bone saddle. This is my Carter saddle. No wonder he's not getting good sound out of it, So he's getting a bone saddle. He'll get non-slotted bridge pins. I slot the bridge. He'll probably get the antique acoustic small red dot. I might turn these around backwards. I don't know if he wants to save a little money, but these pins are in good shape. But they're softer plastic than the antique acoustics, and they've got slots in them. And I've seen people put slots facing forward on a slotted bridge, which is really counterproductive. So we'll talk about that. But he's definitely getting a slotted bridge. What else on this? 90s. I think there's finish underneath this bridge. I can't remember what years they stopped. Let's see how the bridge is fitting. Oh yeah, look at that. See that? That's sliding under the bridge and it's stopping on the finish right there. So I'm getting that feeler gauge in there quite a bit. Yeah. Thing to do with this would we go ahead and take the bridge off, scrape the finish off, glue the bridge back on. You're going to gain a surprising amount of sound right there. And I know this because a friend of mine, Dave, who owns Red Bear Picks, we did a trade many years ago, and I traded him a Sunburst D18 GE that I had for basically that equivalent in guitar picks, which I then sold and made money on. It was a good trade for both of us. And I traded him a fantastic Sunburst D18 GE. But I did all the modifications to accept. I had not done the bridge. I hadn't pulled the bridge and scraped that. He played the guitar for several years. The bridge started coming up a little bit, so he had a friend of his take the bridge off, scrape the finish off, re-glue it back on the wood, and he said the difference was quite noticeable. I want to say astonishing or significant or some kind of dramatic word like that, but let's just say that the difference was significant. And Dave has really good ears, so I believe him. So there's sound to be gained from the bridge. So I think we have to take the bridge off, scrape the finish off, re-glue that, and that kind of thing. The bridge shape looks real good. I'm not going to change anything on the bridge shape. That looks real good. Let's see if I can take away just a little bit and gain him just a little bit more saddle. How tall is this bridge? No, 320, 325. That bridge is on the low side. I wouldn't shave the bridge at all to gain him some saddle. He'll be all right. He'll be all right. Okay, so maybe in that, I'm going to adjust the nut. I'm going to take a little bit of relief out of it. I'm going to take the popsicle brace out. I'm going to shave the rear back braces. I'm going to scallop just the X braces. And probably take that bridge off, scrape the finish away, glue it back down again. He's going to slot the bridge, probably use non-slotted bridge pins. He's good to go after that. Might happen this week. Let's see. This obviously is a replacement pickguard. It looks pretty decent. It's following the rosette. Pretty good right there. Just one little spot right there. I can't say I would do better than that. I have little spots too. It looks pretty good. Nice looking pickguard. So this will be a pretty decent guitar, I think, when it gets done. Yeah, you can hear that. Kind of nasally. It'll sound better. Neck is pretty slim on these 90s. Nowhere near what it was on that 70s. 70s had a great neck, which I didn't mention, but this neck's all right, All right. Here's a guitar that's in progress. Not a brand new one in here, but I just thought I would show it to you while we're running tape here. It didn't cost anything. This is a D35. And in the shop, things always come in waves. So I had another video recently. I had like 3 D35s in here all of a sudden, and it's tricky to keep track of all the different ones sometimes. Which is why I put a piece of tape with the customer's name on there. This is a 281. This is another 70s D35, and I swear this one's been refinished too. That finish is just too shiny. I'd be amazed if that was the original top finish. It's just too shiny. Pick guards have been replaced, it looks like. No, maybe not. Something's interesting with this pick guard because it's not potato chipped. So it's either been restuck or something. I have never seen the 70s, rarely seen the 70s that didn't have a crack in it. And it may have a crack up in here, underneath. Doesn't have a B-string crack on it. Finish is super shiny on the back. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to ask him. Anyway, on this one's pretty standard 70s again. I don't scallop D35s, so that's out of the question. I replaced the tuners. This one's got Gotos on it. Goto open backs. It's going to get a new nut. His frets were in good shape. I didn't refret anything. And the relief was pretty decent. Yeah, I didn't do neck reset on this one yet. We may. I'm thinking about it. Let's see what it's going to need. I did shave the bridge down. That's what happened. This one had a really fat bridge on it. And I reshaped it to thinner. It's down to about 320 now. Which forestalled, 350. It's still plenty thick. So he's got a pretty good bridge on it. And there was no need to do neck reset on this guitar. I did take the bridge height down. I think it was like about 380 or 390. It was a big fat bridge. So I took that down. I'm going to cut a long through saddle. And you can see here where I've got it filled. And I'm waiting. I was waiting for the glue to dry for me to get time. I'm going to cut a long vintage through saddle through there. I did the bridge plate on it. Interestingly, this is the guitar, I think. This one had a large maple bridge plate in it. Now that's interesting. That's why I think it's been refinished. So it's been to the factory or something went on with this top. And it's fascinating that Martin or whoever did it would put a large maple bridge plate in it. Because you think if they were thinking about the maple, that they would have gone ahead and put a small maple bridge plate in it, but they didn't. So that's curious. But it's got a small plate in it now, and I think I used, let me check this one. I think I used a hot rosewood on this. I did. I used this one's going to be interesting. I used a small Brazilian rosewood bridge plate on this. I had a piece of Brazilian head plate that I'm not ever going to use for a head plate. So I used a small Brazilian rosewood bridge plate in there. I put a Southeast Asian rosewood bridge plate in my personal or the shop D35. He's got a loose binding right here. So he's got a loose binding right there I need to take care of. But I put a Southeast Asian rosewood bridge plate in the shop's D35, and I was impressed to death with it. There's nothing wrong with the rosewood as long as it's small. And this was a super, super light piece of Brazilian rosewood. So, bang, man, it rang like a bell. Just the clearest tap tone in the world. And super light. So, I'm confident this one's going to sound really good. I just thought I'd do that. I don't know why. He seemed like a good guy to get a Brazilian rosewood bridge plate. One thing funny about this one is on the D35s, you always got to look for the X braces. The back braces. The back braces are always going to be loose. These were all tight, but he has a loose X brace up here. Which is funny. And I know that because when I was soaking the bridge plate to take it off, I flip it upside down, I put sponges on top of it, and I soak that bridge plate overnight to get some moisture in it, which helps the glue release, helps keep the top from splitting. Just does all those things, And I noticed when I took them out that the water had seeped through the braces, across the braces like that. And I better check that. And yeah, man, his X brace is completely loose up here, which didn't happen from the sponges because it's not enough water to loosen it. I've never had it happen like that. Not as much water went through there, moisture went through there. So I got to make sure I glue up that X brace. That's an unusual thing. He's probably going to get a popsicle brace out of this one. And that's about it. So I did a bridge plate. Popsicle, I'm looking at my list up on the board right there. I did a bridge plate on this. I'm going to do the popsicle brace. I did go-toes. He's going to get a bone nut. He's going to get pins, non-slotted pins. Intonation check is going to be fine because I moved the bridge just a tiny bit. It was pretty good. Which again makes me think, it's just been to the factory for something. They scooted the bridge and refinished the top or something because the bridge was in the correct location. And there's a little bit of finish bubble going on here, which is kind of typical of a newer Martin finish. It's got a little bit more plasticizer in it, and so it's more plastic. So indications suggest that the bridge was scooted or something went on in the factory. I don't know what particularly. But his bridge is in pretty good spot. Scooted just a tiny bit. I'm going to cut a new saddle slot. Intonation is going to be dead on. He's got a loose X brace. I shaped the bridge down, reshaped it to make it more slimmer, and still well within range of what it could be. So, gosh, this one's going to be done pretty good too. So, on my triage, then I'm going to put this one up. I'm going to put the one with the K&K. And the strap button, that's hot on the list. This one's hot on the list. In fact, there he is right there on the to-do list. And then I'm going to move that 90s onto the hot list. So with any kind of luck, I can get 3 guitars done this week. Like I said, I got a huge, massive snowstorm coming tonight through Wednesday. We're expecting almost 14 inches of snow. Tomorrow is going to be windy. It's going to be up to 20-mile-an-hour winds, which is a lot in the mountains. The snow is going to be blowing. It's going to be nasty. I don't want to go skiing tomorrow. I'm going to wait for it to stop snowing, and then I'll go skiing. So I intend to hold up. I hope to hold up here in the shop tomorrow, and I'm going to get major progress on this one. I'm going to get the K&K done, and I'm going to make major progress on that 90s. I might be able to finish all 3 guitars tomorrow. Maybe the next day. What's tomorrow? Tomorrow's Tuesday. So by Tuesday or Wednesday, I hope to have 3 guitars done, which will leave me with 3, which one of them is a 70s, and then the neck reset probably on that museum special. So we're looking good, a couple more months worth of work, but I'd like to get 3 of them knocked out here this week. So that's the whole purpose of this triage thing. It takes me a little bit of time to sit here and go through them and reevaluate my list again. But by looking at that list, I can see I could get 3 guitars knocked out of here this week. And he's also got some binding right here I need to fix up. Not bad. It's going in nice. I'll probably just do that right now. There we go. Sorry about the long time between videos, but it's been busy. And now I'm cooking on guitars again, so maybe we'll get a couple more videos out of this week as I work on these. Alright, in fact, I need to cut that long saddle slot, and so I did a video on that, and I was messing with the GoPro. You couldn't see the camera angle very good, so maybe I'll do a video on cutting the long vintage saddle slot, which is probably something you're not going to do on your own, but who knows, you might. Off to work.